The air in the room was cold. It tasted like damp concrete and old regrets. This is what the end looks like. It is not a bang, it is a slow, suffocating silence. She sat on the floor of an empty apartment. No furniture, no warmth. Just the flickering light of a street lamp outside. Everything was gone. Her home, her savings, her family. The people who promised to stay were the first to run. Loss is a heavy coat. It weighs you down until your knees hit the dirt. She was at the bottom. The dirt felt permanent. Poverty has a specific smell. It smells like unwashed clothes and cheap instant noodles. It smells like the fear that hits your stomach when the envelope under the door is red. The eviction notice was a scar. It told her she didn't belong anywhere. She walked the streets with her head down. She didn't want to see the pity. Pity is worse than hate. Pity means they have already given up on you. She remembered the dinner parties. She remembered the expensive wine and the fake smiles. Those people were gone now. They deleted her number when the money ran out. They laughed behind her back. She heard the whispers. They called her a cautionary tale. They used her name as a warning to their children. Look at her. She had it all. Now she has nothing. Failure is loud. It screams in the silence of a grocery store aisle when your card is declined. The cashier didn't look up. The line behind her grew restless. She felt the heat rise in her neck. Humiliation is a slow burn. It stays in the marrow of your bones. She left the groceries on the counter. She walked out into the rain. The rain didn't feel cinematic. It felt like needles. It felt like the world was trying to wash her away. Her family was the hardest part. The phone calls were clinical. Her mother's voice was a blade of disappointment. Why can't you be normal? Why did you risk it all? They didn't offer a bed. They offered lectures. They told her to settle. They told her to accept her defeat. The pressure was a mountain. It sat on her chest every night. She couldn't breathe. She took a job cleaning offices at night. She scrubbed the floors of the building she used to lead. She saw the ghost of her old self in the glass windows. A woman in a sharp suit, a woman with a future. Now she wore a gray uniform. She smelled like bleach and failure. One night, an old colleague walked past. He didn't recognize her. He stepped over her wet floor like she was part of the architecture. He looked through her. To him, she was invisible. To the world, she was a ghost. The hunger was a constant companion. It wasn't just the stomach, it was the hunger for dignity. She watched people buy coffee that cost more than her daily wage. She calculated the pennies. She lived in the math of survival. Every cent was a battle. Every day was a war. The fatigue began to settle in her eyes. It was a deep, grayish exhaustion. It wasn't sleep she needed. She needed a reason to wake up. Her shoes had holes. She stuffed them with cardboard. The cardboard turned to mush in the puddles. She walked miles to save $1 on bus fare. Her feet bled. She didn't cry. Crying takes energy. Energy costs calories. She had none to spare. She was a machine of endurance, but even machines break. The rust was spreading. She sat in a public library to stay warm. She watched families. She watched people with plans. They had destinations. She only had a clock. She was waiting for the day to end so she could start the next miserable one. The shame was a shadow that followed her into every room. It told her this was her place. The bottom was her home. She started to believe the whispers. She started to believe she deserved the dirt. The humiliation peaked at a wedding she shouldn't have attended. She stood in the back in her only clean dress. It was 5 years old. It hung loose on her frame. She saw her cousins laughing. They pointed. They didn't invite her to the photos. She was the stain on the family portrait. She left before the cake was cut. She walked home in the dark. The streetlights felt like spotlights on her failure. Every door was locked. Every bridge was burned. She looked at her hands. They were cracked and stained from the cleaning chemicals. These were the hands of a loser. That's what the world said. That's what the mirror said. The suffering wasn't just the lack of money, it was the loss of her soul. She was a hollow shell. She was waiting for the wind to blow her away. She was tired of fighting. She was tired of breathing. The darkness wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. It was winning. The breaking point doesn't arrive with a scream. It arrives with a heavy, terrifying stillness. For her, it was a Tuesday. It was raining again. She was standing in her kitchen, the power cut off for 2 hours. The refrigerator gave one last dying groan and then fell silent. The silence was absolute, a physical weight pressing down on her. Her eyes fixed on a single candle flickering on the counter. It was the last one. When that flame died, she would be in total darkness. She reached for a glass of water, but her hand shook uncontrollably. The glass slipped, shattering against the floor. She didn't flinch. She didn't jump. She just stared at the shards. They looked like her life sharp, broken, useless. She slowly sank to her knees among the glass, not caring if it cut her. The physical sting was almost a relief from the emptiness rotting in her chest. This was the moment. The very edge of the cliff. The urge to let go, to just lie down on that cold floor and never get back up, was overwhelming. Giving up is easy. It's a soft surrender, the end of the hunger and the shame. She closed her eyes, waiting for the void to take her. She stayed there for what felt like hours. The candle burned down to a nub of wax. The flame sputtered, gasped, and then went out. Darkness. In that profound darkness, something shifted. It wasn't hope. Hope is a luxury for the lucky. It wasn't inspiration. Inspiration is a lie told by people who have never been truly hungry. No, what she felt was spite. A cold, hard grain of anger began to glow in her gut. She pictured the faces of the people who laughed at her. She saw the manager who looked right through her, the family that had closed their doors on her. If she died here, they won. If she stayed on this floor, their version of her, the failure, would become the only truth. That thought was unacceptable. Slowly, she stood up. Her knees popped. Her back ached. She didn't turn on a light. She didn't need one. In the dark, she began to clean up the glass, feeling the edges of the shards with her bare fingers. She didn't flinch. She was done feeling. She was ready to work. The real turning point wasn't a miracle. It was a schedule. 4 a.m. The world is dead at 4. It is cold, lonely, the hour of the martyr and madman. She started waking up before the sun. Her room was freezing and her body screamed for more sleep, but she ignored it. She discovered a fundamental truth. Discipline is the ability to do what you hate as if you love it. She started with the basics. She ran. She didn't have proper gym clothes, just old sneakers and a worn-out hoodie. She ran until her lungs burned, until the physical agony drowned out the noise in her head. When you're running for your life, you don't worry about your reputation. You only worry about the next breath. After her run, she would return to her dark apartment and study. She had kept 3 books from her old life. They were technical, dry, and they were her new weapons. She read by the faint light of the street lamp outside her window, taking notes on the back of old bills. She was reconstructing her mind, realizing her past success was built on ego. This new foundation would be built on pure iron. She stopped talking. Silence became her power. She stopped explaining herself to people who didn't matter. She deleted social media, cutting off the curated lives of people she used to know. She became a ghost in the city. At her cleaning job, she worked with a new intensity. She didn't just scrub floors, she observed. She listened to the conversations of the executives in the offices she cleaned. She learned their problems. She saw their gaps. Every single dollar was partitioned. 5 cents for water, 10 cents for rice. The rest was saved for the future. She lived on the edge of starvation to fund her rebirth. With her savings, she bought a second-hand laptop with a cracked screen. She spent her nights in 24-hour diners, using their free Wi-Fi until they kicked her out. Then she just moved to the next one. She was a nomad of ambition. Failure wasn't done with her yet. Her laptop charger broke, $30 to replace it. That was a week of food. She didn't cry. She skipped the food and bought the cord. She worked through the hunger cramps, her eyes growing sunken, her skin pale. But her gaze was different now. It was no longer the look of a victim. It was the look of a predator, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. And then she began to build. Small things at first. Lines of code, business plans, strategies for the very companies that had discarded her. She sent out 100 emails. 99 were ignored. One was a polite rejection. She didn't care. Rejection is just data. She adjusted her approach and sent 100 more. She practiced her pitch in front of a cracked mirror. She didn't look like a CEO. She looked like a survivor. And she realized that was her greatest asset. You can't break someone who has already been shattered. You can't scare someone who has slept in the dirt. She was dangerous because she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The 4 a.m. grind became her religion. While the world slept, she sharpened her blade. While her rivals were at parties, she was in the trenches of her own mind, fighting a war no one else could see. She learned to love the boredom, to embrace the repetition. That discipline became a wall she built around her soul. Nothing could get in. No doubt, no fear, no ghosts of the old life. She wasn't looking for a handout. She was looking for a way in. Eventually, she found a small opening. A tiny consulting gig for a struggling firm. They were desperate, and she was cheaper than the big agencies. She took the job and worked 20 hours a day. She delivered results they didn't think were possible. She didn't do it for the money. She did it for the proof. The first paycheck arrived. It wasn't much, but it was clean. It wasn't the result of pity. It was the result of value. She held the check in her hand, her fingers still scarred from cleaning chemicals. She looked at the numbers. They weren't just numbers. They were the first bricks in her new empire. The turning point was over. The rise had begun. This story isn't just about success. It is about what happens when you re-stripped of everything and decide to fight back with nothing but grit and spite. It's a reminder that sometimes our greatest comebacks don't start with a flash of light, but in total darkness. If you're in that dark place, remember this story. And if you're struggling, please know that reaching out is a sign of strength. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you next time. The rise was not a vertical line. It was a jagged series of peaks and valleys, but every valley was higher than the last. She moved from the consulting gig to a small contract, then a larger one. She was no longer cleaning offices at night. She was running a small desk in the corner of one. She was the first to arrive. She was the last to leave. The janitors knew her name. They saw themselves in her eyes. She treated them with a respect the suits could never understand. She was underestimated. This was her superpower. Her rivals saw a woman with a cheap blazer and a tired face. They didn't see the wolf inside. They thought she was lucky. They thought she was a fluke. She let them think it. In business, being invisible is an advantage. You can move through the tall grass without making a sound. By the time they heard her breathing, it was too late. Small wins began to stack like cordwood. She closed a deal that saved a dying tech firm. She restructured a logistics company that everyone had written off. Her reputation began to precede her, not as the woman who lost everything, but as the woman who could fix anything. The whispers changed. They weren't laughing anymore. They were curious. They were intimidated. She faced a massive setback. A partner tried to steal her intellectual property. He thought she was weak because she had a history of failure. He thought she would fold. He didn't know that she had already survived the worst thing the world could do. She didn't sue him. She outmaneuvered him. She worked 3 days straight without sleep. She pivoted her entire strategy and left him holding an empty shell. When he called her screaming, she simply hung up. She didn't have time for noise. She only had time for signal. Then came the payoff. The moment the world had to acknowledge her, she stood in a boardroom on the 50th floor of the city's tallest building. Below her, the streets looked like veins. She remembered walking those streets with cardboard in her shoes. She remembered the hunger. She remembered the smell of the bleach. Now, the air smelled like expensive leather and success. She was signing the merger. It was a deal worth millions. Across the table sat the man who had looked through her when she was scrubbing his floors. He didn't recognize her. Not at first. His smile had practiced corporate smile. He offered his hand. She looked at his hand. She didn't take it. She looked him in the eye. For a second, the mask slipped. He saw the girl from the rainy night. He saw the ghost. He turned pale. She didn't say a word. She signed the paper, closed her pen, and walked out. Power is not about the money. Money is just a tool. Power is the ability to walk away. Power is the freedom to say no. She bought back her family's old estate, not to live in it. She turned it into a foundation for women who had hit rock bottom. She didn't give them a handout. She gave them a desk. She gave them a library. She gave them a 4 a.m. wake-up call. Her family tried to return. Her mother called. Her cousins sent flowers. They talked about family bonds and misunderstandings. She listened to their excuses. She felt nothing, no anger, no love, just a cold, clear distance. She sent them a check that would cover their debts. Then she blocked their numbers. She wasn't being cruel. She was being clean. You cannot build a new life with people who are happy to watch you die in the old one. The success was cinematic, but the reality was quiet. She still woke up at 4 a.m. The habit was part of her DNA now. She didn't need the money to motivate her. She was motivated by the memory of the cold floor. She was driven by the knowledge of how easy it is to lose everything. That fear made her unbreakable. It made her precise. She sat on her balcony overlooking the city. The sun was beginning to bleed over the horizon. The orange light hit the glass towers. She was no longer a cautionary tale. She was the standard. She had been through the fire and didn't just survive. She became the flame. The message is simple. The world will try to break you. It is the world's job to test your structure. It will take your money. It will take your friends. It will take your pride. It will leave you in the dark, shivering, with nothing but the sound of your own heartbeat. That is the moment of choice. Most people stay on the floor. They accept the dirt. They believe the whispers. But a few, the ones who truly rise, realize that the bottom is not a grave. It is a foundation. Rock bottom is the only place where there is no more room for lies. You find out who you are when you have nothing left to lose. Pain is a currency. You can spend it on self-pity, or you can invest it in your future. Discipline is the only bridge between the person you are and the person you want to become. Motivation is a feeling. It is fickle. It leaves when the room gets cold. Discipline stays. Discipline wakes you up at 4 a.m. when your body wants to quit. She lost everything she loved. And in the vacuum of that loss, she found the only thing that could never be taken away. She found herself. She rose not because she was lucky. She rose because she refused to stay down. The dirt didn't bury her. It grew her. If you are in the dark right now, listen. The silence is not the end. It is the beginning. Stand up. Clean up the glass. Start the clock. The sun is coming. But you have to be working before it arrives.